Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the lefts, we go up to the rights, we go up to the middle of independence, we go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything. And you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on. It's going to be fun.
All right, guys. Today's date, July the 12th, 2023, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm host the most Will Buchanan, How the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. Before I do get started, guys, let you know that we are a news podcast, which means we try to give you the best news from the most reputable sources. I'm not talking about Fox News or any of those other places because they're not real news sites. At the same time, we do try to maintain a level of professionalism, so we do try not to use cuss words a lot, but hey, sometimes words do fly. At the same time, guys, there may be things that might be shown that might be too intense for younger viewers, so your discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome. So let's just go ahead and get right on into it. Right now, the Biden administration, although Joe Biden right now is gearing up for his next presidential campaign run, he's touting Biden economics and things of that nature. But he's also doing something which kind of reminds me of what he was doing the first time he was running, that the Biden administration is proposing making childcare more affordable for working families. Where have we heard this before? The Biden administration unveiled Tuesday a series of proposed measures to make childcare more affordable. Keep in mind, the proposal is stemming from an executive order that he signed way back in April that will make adjustments to the federal Child Care Development Block Program, which provides states with funding to help low-income working households pay for child care. For example, it would cap child care copays at more than 7% of a family's income and encourage states to waive copays for families at or below 150% of the federal poverty level, or about $37,300 for a family of three in 2023. Now, if you're probably wondering where have I heard this before, it's because Biden tried to make this one of his signature campaign promises when he first ran against Donald Trump, which seems like years ago, but really was only 4 years ago. So I am not against this, but at the same time, it just feels like Biden is kind of doing what Trump's doing right now, which is going back to the oldies. Childcare is high. Extremely freaking high. We all know this. At the same time, it still doesn't address the problem that childcare should not be as high as, say, private school tuition. The average childcare for the average childcare across the nation right now is anywhere between $370 to almost $510 a month. A week is what I meant to say. Not a month, a week. So you got to think, if your childcare is at least $300 to $500 a week, and think about how much you're spending month-wise, that is more than the average. That is more than probably your average take-home pay that you're just spending in watching your child. Which is why a lot of families out there may have to decide on whether or not a parent has to stop working in order to care for the children. At the same time, why some Americans out there may not be thinking about having children at all, just because of the costs associated with it. I'm not saying it's a bad idea what Biden's trying to do, but it doesn't address the bane of the problem, which again, in our society, everything goes up for your paycheck. It's amazing that yes, you should give tax incentives, you should give tax breaks, your Biden economics, if you will, which is actually aimed at helping the middle and lower class, because historically that's how American economy has always boomed, is that you gave tax breaks and tax incentives to the middle and lower classes. That's how the economy has flourished. Not giving it to the top 1%, which is basically Reaganomics, which is trickle down, which is basically also known as trickle down economics, which is basically BS. So I'm not against the idea of the fact that childcare should be more affordable. It really should be, but we're not looking at the fact of what is making the cost of it so high, which again could be a number of factors. Could be paying workers. It could be also childcare supplies. Formula is still a problem. It just doesn't get said a lot in the news. But if you have an infant, like I have an infant, that uses formula right now is still hard to come by because hospitals usually get priority. But as we talked about in this podcast a few months ago, you only found out that majority of America's formula really only comes from one location. And that one location practically went down and caused a shortage for a number of weeks. But again, that's delving into the problem. Again, I'm not against the idea of Biden actually trying to push for affordable child care. I would still say the best ways to solve those problems is to still look into why things are so high. At the same time, why are minimum wage and we're still getting paid less? Because if you haven't, I mean, we can only stretch a penny so far until it breaks. But again, not against it. But much like most of Biden's presidency, I still want him to do more. I really, truly do. But moving right along, there is another person that's kind of in hot water right now. A Senator Tommy Tuberville, if you don't know who he is, former college football coach, now a state senator, is in hot water because he doesn't believe white nationalists are racist. Yes, that's exactly what he said.
Back here, Alabama Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville is tripling down on his claim now that white nationalists are unfairly labeled racist. Tuberville has repeatedly challenged the label of white nationalism, starting back in May in a radio interview while discussing whether white nationalists should be allowed in the military. He said Democrats call them that and that he calls them, quote, Americans. Now the Republican is being pressed again about his stance, this time on CNN. He said a white nationalist to him is an American, not a racist.
You said a white nationalist is an American, but a white nationalist is someone who believes horrific things. Do you really think that's someone who should be serving in the military?
Well, that's just a name that has been given. I mean,
it's not. It's a real definition. There's real concerns about
extremism. So if you're going to do away with most white people in this country out of the military, we got huge problems.
It's not. Huge problems. It's not people who are white. It's white nationalists
that have a few probably different beliefs.
Right?
That have different beliefs. Now, if racism is one of those beliefs, I'm totally against it. I am totally against racism.
But
there's a lot of people that believe in different things.
Is racist, Senator?
Well, that's your opinion.
Jay O'Brien is on Capitol Hill. So, Jay, the senator defending his stance yet again today.
Yeah, and these comments, as you laid out, Kira, have really followed the senator since he first makes those initial comments in that radio interview in May when he's asked if white nationalists should serve in the military, and he says, I call them Americans. Then he gets that chance, as you laid out on CNN last night, to walk back those comments, to clarify them, to disavow them, and the exchange that you just played ensues. And then there is this third chance today in the halls of the Capitol with our own Rachel Scott. Here is what happened.
Can you explain why you continue to insist that white nationalists are American?
Listen, I'm totally against racism. And if the Democrats want to say that white nationalists are racist, I'm totally against that too.
But that's not a Democratic definition. The definition of a white nationalist is someone.
My definition.
It is the definition. The definition. The definition is that the belief that the white race is superior to all other races.
Totally out of the question.
So, do you believe that white nationalists are racist?
Yes, if that's what a racist is, yes. Thank you.
All right, so what he keeps saying there, Kira, is next question, next question, next question, as Rachel continues to press him. But that initial moment you see in the interview is he says, if Democrats, meaning saying Democrats, label white nationalists as racist, despite the fact that, as Rachel noted, the definition of being a white nationalist is being a racist. Now, the Democratic response to all of this came from Senator Schumer today, earlier in the Senate, who called Senator Tuberville's comments, quote, wrong, wrong, wrong.
He is wrong. So how are fellow Republicans reacting?
Well, on the other side of the aisle, we heard from the top Republican in the Senate. Senator Schumer is the top Democrat, and the top Republican, Senator Mitch McConnell, saying, I'll quote him directly here, white supremacy is simply unacceptable in the military and in our home country. So him drawing a stark line, rebuking Senator Tuberville as well. We're waiting to see what the level of reaction is from other Senate Republicans as they interact with reporters over the course of the day. But certainly the top Republican in the Senate saying that he also condemns Tuberville's comments.
Well, Senator Tuberville is also moving on to other issues like blocking some military nominations because because of his opposition to this Pentagon policy on service member abortion access. What's the latest there?
Well, that's something that Republicans are not so willing to rebuke Senator Tuberville over. This is him, again, holding up an estimated 260 senior military nominations because of his opposition to that abortion policy. And Democrats are hoping Republicans can pressure him to give up that and let those nominations through. Here is what one Democrat and one Republican told me earlier today. Have you seen an appetite from Republicans on the committee to put pressure on Senator Tuberville?
I think they've been doing it quietly, but I think now it takes a more political posture.
The DOD, though, calls this a national security risk. Does that concern you?
Well, look, they're lobbying. And if this is a national security risk, as they're suggesting, then they should make contact with Senator Tuberville and work this out. It's a two-way street.
So the first gentleman you heard from there is Senator Jack Reed, who is the chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and he is a Democrat, and he's calling on Republicans to exert pressure on Tuberville. On the other side of that, you heard Mike Rounds, senator from South Dakota, who said he wants the DOD and Tuberville to get in a room and hammer this out, presenting this more as something that can be negotiated. But Tuberville saying he's not going to back down unless there's some change to this abortion policy, and that doesn't look on the horizon. So what the off-ramp here is still unclear.
So let's back up the truck for a second. Two things. There's a reason why Tommy Tuberville is in the news. First one, for all those that don't know, nationalist is a racist. That's the actual definition of a nationalist. People get that confused with patriotism. No, patriotism and nationalism are two different things. Nationalism are what Trump fans think they are. That's pretty much it. Tommy Tuberville, again, is from Alabama, good old boy territory. And his father before him had some very questionable views. It seems the son is not too far away. At the same time, he's not going to call nationalists racist. They're his biggest donor base. And why are we surprised coming from a red state? And the fact that kudos to the reporter for pressing him, which is what I wish all reporters should do. All journalists really should be pressing and call these politicians out on their BS. Because Tuberville was given multiple chances, like, are you sure that's the hill you want to die on? Saying that nationalists aren't racist, and that if the Democrats label them as racist, then I guess I agree. No, that is the cop-out. Say what you mean, sir. Because I respect you more, but then again, he doesn't want to be seen as a racist. Because you know why? Racist kills votes, which you would think it would, considering the fact that DeSantis and others are still in power. But again, he's going to sit there because he doesn't want to be seen as a racist. Because here's the thing about racists and nationalists. They could be seen and labeled as anything but racist because they don't want to be labeled their true nature. Because that true nature comes with consequences and social media cancellation. And at the same time, he's going to sit there and say, well, I can't be racist because I was a former college football coach that had plenty of minorities around me. How can I be racist? Oh, same way a murderer on a killing spree can have friends. That doesn't mean spit, especially in the world of college football. If you think college football is all about merit and student athletes and excellence and all this mess, if you think that's what college sports is about, my friend, you are either full of it or highly blind. College football is about money. It's always been about money. And if minorities who can run faster, jump higher, can play defense, can run offense, can run track, can bowl, can golf, can do any of the above, anything of the above that brings money and boosters to your school. That's what college sports is all about. So him saying that, well, he can't be racist because he's coached many minorities, remember where he came from, he's dealt with black kids. But you can't say black kids because apparently in the same word saying you're racist makes you look a little bit different. But no, Senator Tuberville, you can say what you want to say. You don't believe that white nationalists are racist? Cool. Hopefully your constituents in Alabama will see that and decide to make their feelings known up on the voting block. But the other reason why he's being brought up, guys, is because he is literally the holdup to the nominations for armed services. Because as of right now, The leader of the U.S. there is not a current commander of the U.S. Marine Forces right now. They're waiting because, again, there is a bill regarding abortion access for armed service workers that is currently on the docket, and that he wants that amended. And that because of his holdout, nearly 209 nominations won't get passed until he gets what he wants. And that should tell you everything you want to know about the GOP, aside from a bill that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. But yes, a white nationalist who doesn't think nationalists are racist, but still believes in wanting to control abortion for armed services. And yet they support the troops. Right. I'm just calling a spade a spade. But moving along, guys, I wanted to cover this story because in California, the homeless population is a problem. However, Californians, the state of California spent nearly $18 billion to resolve the homeless problem. They still have a bigger homeless problem.
$0.5 billion. That's what California spent fighting homelessness over the past 4 years. At the same time, the homeless population of the state grew by around a third.
The problem would be so much worse absent these interventions. And that's not what people want to hear. I get it. We get it.
Here's some reductive back-of-the-envelope math. With $17.5 billion in theory, the state could have just paid the rent for every unhoused person in all 4 years.
It is reductive, and can I say why with respect? Perhaps that would work for me, because I don't have significant behavioral health challenges.
My reductive math did leave maybe $3 billion for mental health and other services, but even if the state did just offer to pay the rent, there just aren't enough affordable houses to go around.
Where are we supposed to go? I mean, this is what poverty looks like.
Dr. Margot Kushel was just commissioned to find out who is homeless in California and why, in the hope her data might fine-tune the state's response. Her survey has busted some myths. Myth number one, most homeless people don't want a home. Not true. Participants overwhelmingly wanted permanent housing. Take Daniel and his disabled son who live on LA's Skid Row.
You would take it if they offered you housing?
Yes, I would. Yes, we would together. Yes. I'm his father and we need it.
Myth number two, many homeless people here aren't from California. Therefore, the state owes them nothing.
9 out of 10 people lost their stable housing here. These are Californians. We have to create the housing for all Californians.
There is a state plan to build 2.5 million more homes by 2030. 1 million among them must be affordable. But when it comes to housing, zoning is ultimately down to local government.
We've got communities in this state that are refusing to build low-income housing because they say it's all just rapists and child molesters. So that's the dynamic that we're facing.
Past 2 or 3 years, the state, they say, has built 13,500 affordable housing units. Baby steps. Christina Smith just moved into one after 5 years on the street.
I thought it was fake. I'm sorry. Until they gave me the keys. And then I was like, this is real. You don't believe it after a while.
Now to the why. Why do so many Californians become homeless?
Even when we did have a job and we tried to look for housing out here, it was like impossible.
Rent is too high because housing supply is too low. And many who fall into homelessness say it's really not by much.
One of the surprising things was how optimistic people were that relatively small amounts of money would have prevented their homelessness. For a lot of them, that $300 to $500 a month would do the trick.
But bigger picture, longer term?
At the end of the day, if we want to truly solve homelessness in America, we need to build more housing. That starts with us.
New questions.
Okay, so the thing about this is, and this is the thing I don't get, because I'm just using California as an example, because it's everywhere, including my home state of Tennessee. It's everywhere. But think about that. In 4 years, California spent $18 billion and their homeless population increased, didn't decrease. You built almost 14,000 affordable homes in that time span. At the same time, there is still the issue of why is let's just say home ownership or even renting an apartment seems nearly impossible. because that's becoming a growing problem in a lot of areas, especially not just California. Because even like I said before, even my home state of Tennessee right now, there are more. The name of the game is, and I've said this before multiple times on this podcast, is that who's the bigger cash cow, renters or homeowners? And I have said this many times. Homeowners have a finite number of payments you can get from them until they own the home. Homeowners, when they get a mortgage, are working their butts off to try to pay off the home, and hopefully within 10 to 20 years can sit there and say they own their home. That is usually the American dream, to own your home in 20 years or less. But the goalpost keeps getting pushed back. Why? Because you have multi-billion-dollar companies, mortgage lending owner groups that are coming in, that are purchasing these homes with their limitless funds, bulldoze the home because it has acres, will build up apartments, or will build up what I like to call zero-lot homes with no backyards, and will rent them. Keep in mind what I said, not selling, renting. Why? Renters are cash cows. Renters are guaranteed income at the beginning of the month. And companies have figured it. Companies, especially mortgage companies and hedge funds have figured this out. That's why a lot of them, coming usually from up north, places like New York or Vermont or Montana or California, are coming to areas, let's just say the South, for example, see opportunity to buy land or buy homes, and they run with it. This is why I keep saying there's a problem, because this is where government should step in and really start protecting homeowners, because the American dream is to own a home, a backyard, land to your name. That's always been the dream. But that dream becomes harder and harder and harder when you don't address income, when you don't address that there is simply one side out there that has way too many funds, access, and opportunity versus your average American who can have a median income of $45,000 to maybe $60,000 a year, who tries to qualify for a home but has to jump through all these hoops through the very same banks that won't give them a home loan, but will gladly give one of these mortgage or hedge fund people the money they need, even though they have limitless options themselves. That's the game. And so if you look at what California did, you had even I would ask that question. You had $18 billion over 4 years. Why did your homeless population increase? I'm like, how hard is it out of $18 billion to basically build more homes? To me, that's more jobs. To me, that's like, okay, that's a construction to build more affordable homes. That means you have just opened up a new market for construction for builders, contractors, plumbers, electricians, whatnot. You have created literally an industry to build affordable homes in those 4 years. But out of $18 billion, you only have nearly 14,000 homes completed. I'm just saying the math ain't mathing. But at the same time, the American dream to own a home seems to be getting more and more difficult. But I have yet to see city, local, state, and federal governments acknowledge this. Why? Because they're too busy lobbying for their vote. That's why. But again, maybe I'm nuts. Moving right along, guys, I want to cover this story as well, because again, I keep saying that as much as so-called Christians think there's a war on religion, women across the United States should be saying there's a war on our bodies. Iowa, in a special session called by their GOP governor, passed a 6-week abortion ban. Yes, I said it. A special session called in by the Iowa governor went ahead to quickly pass an abortion bill that bans abortion at 6 weeks. Are you kidding me? 6 weeks. The bill is currently headed to the Senate right now for another vote before Governor Kim Reynolds, the one who called special session. Can't wait to freaking sign it. Now, again, the bill does include exceptions for miscarriages where the life of the pregnant woman is threatened and fetal abnormalities will result in the infant's death. It also excludes exemptions for pregnancies resulting from rapes reported within 45 days and incest reported within 140 days. So you know what? They're not all bad guys, but as long as you get within that 45-day or 140-day range, as long as you report rape or incest within those time limits, it can't be all bad. 6 weeks. Most women really don't know they're pregnant till at least anywhere between 10 weeks and up. 6 weeks? And this is why I keep saying, how, and I will always stress this, I am pro-choice. I believe a woman should have a right to her own body. The choices and consequences, what she does with her body, are hers and hers alone. It is not for anybody else to decide. Whether you're religious, really confused beliefs or whatnot, you can't be mad about what a woman does with her body. You're not a woman. It's not your body. You can't be mad what another woman does with hers, because I guarantee if we put the same restrictions on men, there would be fires and riots everywhere. Tell me when I'm telling lies. But 6 weeks. Again, most women don't know they're pregnant until 10 weeks or more later. But imagine you being pregnant, and at the time of your conception, the time has passed for you to get an abortion. You know what they should say? Oh, I forgot. There is an exemption in that Iowa bill, though. Exemption for anybody that gets pregnant by a Republican or GOP politician. Then it's just God's plan. But again, I point this out so many freaking times. How is it that we are still, supposedly in the most progressive free nation in the world, and women's bodies are not their own? I mean, I can talk about the fact that racism will never go away, because the fact of the matter is there's two other stories got there about reparations, and we'll get to that. But imagine if you were a woman, and I can only imagine, but being a woman in the United States, the fact that your body, if you decide that this is what you want to do, that you have to go through so many hoops by people who's not in control of your body, but you have to get that approval to get something that you want that only affects you and only you. Ain't that some shit? But again, I only hope, it is my hope, because again, we have the presidential race coming up next year, and then 2 years after you have the midterms. I hope all the women of the United States are paying attention. These are the people that are deciding whether or not you have access over your bodies. The only thing I can sit there and tell you is, I hope you bring that same type of energy come voting, because those people need to be out. But transition to people that thinks that need to be out, education system. I have said this for many, since this podcast since inception. Education has always went downhill in the US, and the pandemic and remote learning just proved the simple fact of the matter is we need a massive overhaul.
Alarming snapshot of learning loss from the pandemic. New test results from the nation's report card show in most states, 4th and 8th graders are falling behind in reading and math. The math scores are historic, the worst decline ever recorded, with roughly 25% of 4th graders and 38% of 8th graders performing below the basic level, the lowest of the 3 achievement levels for the test. Students who were already struggling in school showed the most dramatic drop-off. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona calling the results appalling and unacceptable.
They were isolated for a year and a half to 2 years. That's a huge, huge problem.
Michelle Burke is an 8th grade teacher on Long Island and has a daughter in 8th grade.
My daughter is struggling in math exponentially. A lot of the things that we're seeing emotionally, behaviorally, are putting a huge strain on what you're seeing in the classroom. Huge strain.
The findings come more than a month after similar results showing math and reading scores for 9-year-olds fell by a level not seen in decades. The federal government is pumping billions in relief funds into districts, requiring them to spend at least 20% on learning loss. Schools nationwide have been trying to hire more staff. But with teacher burnout and fewer new teachers, many schools face a teacher shortage, especially in rural areas and those with more low-income families and students of color.
Good afternoon. IDs, please.
At Casa Grande Union High School in Arizona, some classes have more than 70 students. And in other rooms, paraeducators are teaching lessons prepared by a certified teacher.
I think of myself, I struggled with math. And if I was sitting in that classroom, I needed help. I had questions. I need somebody to break it down a different way. If there's nobody who has the content knowledge to do that, I'm going to shut down. And I'm thinking many of our students might be shutting down as well.
Okay, last couple seconds.
So again, see, I want to bring this up for 1 second because I have a very, like I said, I have a very near and dear special place in my heart for educators because those guys do a job to me that's like first responders. They take on the monumental challenge of crafting young minds to the next generation. But think about this for a second. And I give my fiance Kelly credit for this because she said it best. All COVID was the makeup remover for a lot of things. And in this case, that big thing to me was education. Because especially in the South, I've been saying this for years, not only in the South, but across the US, that for the simple fact of the matter, guys, the U.S. has dealt with an issue of education. You dealt with teachers that were underpaid, overstaffed, crowded classrooms, outdated literature. And just recently, there was an attack on teachers, attack on books, attack on education. Don't say gay bill. Teachers using certain books, teachers using certain videos. Parents who believed that CRT was a thing that was being taught in schools, which it wasn't. See, all that basically did was show exactly how bad education has went. And the GOP doesn't care because the GOP wants to privatize education. The GOP's answer to education, charter schools and religious schools getting federal funding. Yes, I said it. Charter schools and charter schools and private schools, sometimes even those religious private schools, getting federal funding. And that's their answer. They want to give you school choice. You can take this voucher and your child can go anywhere they want to. But how are they paying for it? They're taking it away from public schools. And that's the rub. At the same time, you're still not addressing teacher pay. Teachers of certain unions have been on strike only because of the simple fact of the matter that yes, you're not paying them enough. They don't get enough benefits. They're coming too much out of their own pocket. Things of that nature. Your education hasn't changed because you're too busy still doing things in the 1980s. We haven't embraced technology to the point to where it can be useful and helpful to kids. And the simple fact of the matter is, let's also forget the Department of Education's budget gets cut every year, while the military's gets extended every year. The Education Department has to provide an audit. The Department of Defense has yet to pass an audit. It's a perfect freaking storm. And until the issue with education has actually been addressed, this will continue, unfortunately. But again, I wanted to cover this too, because like I said, talking about reparations, here's the crazy part. Imagine you are the survivor of one of the worst massacres in U.S. history. The Tulsa Race Massacre was brought up during an HBO show a few years ago because a lot of people didn't believe for the longest time that the Tulsa Race Massacre didn't exist. They thought it was fiction. They thought because they saw it on a show that it wasn't real. And a lot of people went back to the history books and went, "Oh crap!" The 1921 Tulsa Massacre actually happened. But again, imagine you're one of the survivors. At the same time, you were going to go ahead and bring up a court case to where reparations were easily, beyond a shadow of a doubt, should be awarded to you. And only to imagine a judge threw it out. And if you don't think that happened, it actually did. So 3 survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre are appealing a judge's decision to dismiss their case for reparations. That in itself is crazy. Leslie Bedingfield Randall, Viola Fletcher, and Hughes Van Ellis have been going up against the city of Tulsa and its officials over this case. Judge Caroline Wall dismissed the case easily on Friday. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I talking about this? I am talking about this is because reparations has been a big thing that has been happening. And for the simple fact of the matter, guys, We cannot sit there and say, despite how you may feel about it, and I say despite how you may feel, because a lot of people out there don't believe that Black people are not due reparations. I say easily, because one race moved forward while another race moved backward in 400 years. Take it how you will. But when you have a clear case of reparations, a clear case, something of this nature should be easy to rectify. At the same time, it's not. A judge felt like the case could be dismissed. Now they are appealing the case they are appealing the judge's decision, as they should. But at the same time, what does that actually say? That, oh, you could have everything going for you, but at the same time, it's like, screw it? Really? Screw it? But I shouldn't be surprised by that. But we will follow that up. But again, clear cut survivors, you can track their genealogy to, again, and that's just not one. There have been multiple events like this. But only time out we can say that there's been survivors that can actually speak about it. But again, shouldn't be surprised. But you know what we shouldn't be surprised about? Marjorie Taylor Greene.
But unsurprisingly, Congress is gearing up for its next fight. Some of that fighting is within the Republican Party itself after Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene was kicked out of the right-wing House Freedom Caucus. What does that mean going forward? Joining us now to talk about it is Politico's senior congressional correspondent, Rachel Bade. Rachel, let's start with that big news about Marjorie Taylor Greene getting voted out of the House Freedom Caucus. What does that tell us about the current state of the Republican Party?
I mean, the civil war in the GOP clearly is ongoing. I mean, this dynamic is especially fascinating because Marjorie Taylor Greene is one of the most pro-Trump, pro-MAGA members of the House, and the Freedom Caucus has long been considered one of Trump's top allies in the House. So what gives here? I mean, for the Freedom Caucus, they were actually created in 2015 as this sort of entity that would band together and try to push leadership to the right on policy matters. They essentially exist because they want to challenge GOP leadership. The problem here with Marjorie Taylor Greene is that she has recently become a top ally of Kevin McCarthy, and that goes against, the whole sort of grain of the Freedom Caucus, and it's really irked a lot of these members, which is why they decided to vote for the first time since they've been created several years ago to expel a member. Now, I do think it's important to note that there are a number of Freedom Caucus members who are now friendly with Kevin McCarthy. Think people like Jim Jordan, who was longtime critic of McCarthy, kept him from becoming speaker years ago, but is now one of his best friends. But the difference between Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene, and the reason why she was ousted, but he has not been, is because Marjorie Taylor Greene is very public in her criticism with the Freedom Caucus. She blasted a lot of them for not supporting McCarthy. She blasted a lot of them for not supporting the debt ceiling deal. And the other day, she actually called one of them a word I'm not going to repeat for the sake of children's ears, specifically using a profanity word with a fellow Freedom Caucus member on the House floor. That, I'm told, was the final straw and why she was ultimately given the boot.
Thanks for your restraint in not saying that word, Rachel. But, for all that you're saying that the House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has now won some support from those who were critics not long ago, he is still facing backlash from his colleagues right after agreeing to that debt limit deal with the president. Some House members stopped just about everything on the floor for a couple of weeks now. So what do things look like at the moment? Is McCarthy's job in jeopardy at all?
Republican members on the Hill like to joke that McCarthy's basically like the cat that has 9 lives. Every time you think his speakership is dead, he finds a way to sort of rejuvenate things and come back to life. I will say that when it comes to conservatives and McCarthy's relationships, a lot of trust has been broken in recent weeks because of that debt ceiling deal he made with the White House. And he's doing his utmost right now to try to repair that. The problem is a lot of them feel like he's betrayed them and broken too many promises. And so, they're going to be watching him very closely over the summer. I'm sure the talk about ousting McCarthy is not going to go anywhere. It's going to continue to happen privately. And another big thing to keep in mind, McCarthy and Donald Trump's relationship is a little bit frayed right now. And that's significant because Donald Trump was a longtime ally of McCarthy, and he shielded him from criticism from the far right for a long time. Well, Trump is angry that McCarthy has not endorsed him for speaker. And, his whole team has been complaining about this behind the scenes, saying McCarthy owes them. What is he doing? And so if Trump and McCarthy are on bad terms, this is going to be a problem for McCarthy in the future when he doesn't have a big conservative and MAGA world defender in his corner.
Okay, so let's really get to Marjorie Taylor Greene for a second. She got kicked out of the House Freedom Caucus. If you don't know who they are basically set up to go after anything and everything and basically anything that Democratic president does. They claim it's House Freedom, but really it's just Tea Party light. The fact that Marjorie Taylor Greene got kicked out of that group of people, that alone tells you everything you want to know about Marjorie Taylor Greene. And the fact of the matter is that she doesn't, outside of failure in Chief Donald Trump, she doesn't have a friend in the world. But at the same time, she's still collecting a paycheck for literally doing nothing, right along with Matt Gaetz. How does that not bother conservatives? I will never understand. But speaking of conservative guys, they unveiled a new bill. We should be proud, right? Because conservatives, when they said they were going to come back in and, ride the red wave, they were going to right the wrongs and go after Biden, right? Well, as we've discovered during this congressional run, the Republicans have really been petty, especially with this bill. They're unveiling an election integrity bill. Now, the election integrity bill, you've probably heard this all the time because for the longest time, GOP were saying that we need to strengthen our elections. We need to really protect our voting systems, even though not only did these midterms right along with the previous presidential election, were the safest elections on record. Safest. There was no hint of foul play. There were a few stories of improper voting. They seem to be falling on the conservative side. But with that being said, the legislation they're talking about is supposed to have better access to voter data and removing incentives for non-citizens to vote in local elections. Now, what does that mean by that? They tend to follow, and I wish I could make this up, the bill is surrounding what Atlanta did. Keep in mind, Atlanta, which was a hot temper state for Brian Kemp, because remember what Brian Kemp did. Brian Kemp did a voter dump of registered Georgia voters. Close to 300,000 were dumped by him. He also included, for mail-in ballots, you had to have an additional ID requirements. The drop boxes, the drop boxes for ballot voting was limited. At the same time, they famously made a federal felony law that says that people cannot bring food or water to voters in line. Are you freaking kidding me? And the reason why I bring this up, guys, everything that was in the Atlanta bill is included in this bill. This is why this is nuts. Because this is what the GOP does. See, what a lot of people don't understand is the GOP, when Biden got elected, the GOP, along with Trump, they shirked at mail-in voting. They literally turned around and sat there and said, "Oh, well, mail-in voting is not going to be a big thing. Drop boxes aren't going to be a big thing." But it was. And look at the voter turnout. We avoided a second term of Donald Trump. I could be more proud of America at that time because we sat there and said hell no to the orange wave for another 4 years. The GOP has learned. They have sat there and said, "Oh, we have to stop. We have to limit mail-in voting. We have to limit mail-in voting. We have to limit who can use the drop box. We have to limit what people can do inside of a voting house." I am honestly surprised they haven't went up to be quite honest with you guys, I'm surprised they haven't went up to early voting yet. I'm pretty sure it's on their docket, but I'm surprised they haven't went after it yet. But trust me, it's coming. But to use Brian Kemp and his crazy little dictatorship of voting to basically save him, because Stacey Abrams, I truly believe, if it wasn't for the fact of what Brian Kemp had done, voter purging, putting in those regulations and laws for its state of Georgia, I think Stacey Abrams would have been governor. I truly believe that. But at the same time, this is coming from the GOP, which means it's coming from the House of Representatives. It's going to the Senate, which is still ran by Democrats, so it's probably going to be dead on arrival. But it is amazing to me, folks, that this entire time the GOP, because keep in mind, the House has been controlled by the GOP since January. We're now in July. Can anyone name one productive item that has been beneficial to the American people that the Republicans can sit there and say during their campaign trail for whoever's running for presidency next year? What's one productive thing the GOP has done to help the American people? Because I'll tell you what they haven't. I'm going to tell you what they did do. They did pack the Supreme Court to conservatives to where it's heavily conservative leaning, which allowed them to strike down Roe versus Wade. It allowed them to strike down affirmative action. Let me stress that very heavily. It allowed them to strike down affirmative action when it comes to colleges. But again, just because a crack in the wall doesn't mean that wall is stable. That's all I'm saying. At the same time, what have they done? They still haven't increased wages. They said they're going to bring jobs, but the jobs they bring are still paying $9 and $10 an hour. At the same time, they've cut benefits. They've made it harder to get food and SNAP benefits. And at the same time, a lot of these states are loosening child labor laws. Sarah Huckabee in Arkansas has made it easier for kids to work longer hours. But as long as they get their parents' permission. When we just covered stories of kids less than 14 and younger working 40 to plus hours at fast food, at food processing plants, at meat markets, and they're working 40 plus hours. So that's the GOP's answer so far, guys, that child labor is okay as long as it's the parent's signature, that we're going to strike down affirmative action in colleges, and at the same time, we're going to kill Roe versus Wade. And yet you have Clarence Thomas, Uncle Ruckus, as far as I'm concerned, is salivating at what's next. My guess is Brown versus Board of Education. I can't wait to see how they're going to explain that one. But that's what the GOP has done. And even more so, talking about affirmative action in colleges, you have Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio, who wants to go after liberal arts colleges and Ivy schools after the ruling affirmative action, saying that you guys need to turn around and respect the rule of the Supreme Court. As he said, quote unquote, as you know, the court has instructed to honor the spirit and not just the letter of the ruling. You and your institutions expressed open hostility to the decision and seem to announce an intention to circumvent it. Now, for all those that are probably wondering about affirmative action, a group of Asian students brought forward a case to the Supreme Court saying that they were not considered to be accepted to Harvard because of their race, and try to say that affirmative action did not benefit them. Let me stress something very clearly. Because a lot of people believe out there that we no longer need affirmative action when we do. Because, and I say this with all sincerity in the world, the people who believe that we don't need affirmative action are always going to be white. Because there's this little thing, and I keep on saying this whole time, white privilege, that they don't see it because they don't have the same hardships or challenges that we do. So the problem is going to be with them is they're always going to look at it as, we're progressive now. We don't need affirmative action. Do we really need to have a policy in place that forces colleges, schools, jobs to look at individuals and other minorities to base them on their merit to ensure that we are giving everybody an equal shot and opportunity? Yeah, you do. Because beforehand, you didn't have it. And at the same time, who can honestly sit there and say that we're getting hired or accepted into schools before affirmative action started? I'll tell you right now, it wasn't white folks. Black people need affirmative action. And again, I know this is only towards schools, but at the same time, guys, it's only a matter of time before they try to circumvent it somewhere else. But speaking of circumvention, terrible segue. But anyway, Another strike is on the way. Along with UPS, hotel workers are now joining the fray, right along with those in Hollywood.
Southern California are hitting the picket lines this 4th of July holiday. The union representing local hospitality workers are demanding better working conditions as they seek a new contract. NBC News correspondent Nyla Charles joins us now with more on this. Hey there, good morning. So these workers, they're members of what's called the Unite Here Local 11. That's their union. Explain to us how this got to this point of actually going on strike. What are they looking for here in this new deal with management?
Well, first, Savannah, you cannot ignore the timing of this, right? This is one of the busiest travel weekends of the year, and these hotel workers are going on strike when a lot of people are coming to Los Angeles looking for a stay at a hotel. Well, this is what they're demanding. They make about $20 to $25 an hour. They want a $5 raise right now, also asking for annual raises and more benefits as well. They say ever since COVID, they've been understaffed and underpaid, and that's why when you go to a lot of hotels these days, you're seeing housekeeping services available upon request. And that speaks to the shortage of workers that hotels are already facing, even leading up to this strike. So listen to what the union told us about why they're demanding this right now.
The hotel executives have been raking in money since the middle and beginning of the pandemic. They've gotten $15 million of bailouts from the government, while the workers, the dishwashers, the servers, the housekeepers are barely scraping by.
So there's concerns, really echo concerns from workers across the country who say their wages aren't stacking up when you look at inflation. Of course, now these hotel workers are asking the hotels themselves for more money, given the fact that they're bringing in a lot of profits right now. Savannah?
Let's talk about the other side of this, Nyla. What are we hearing from hotel companies, hospitality companies about these negotiations?
Hotel companies say even though they've offered these workers half of the raise they asked for, they still have no deal. At this point, negotiations are at a standstill, Savannah. The hotel companies are accusing the union of not coming to the bargaining table for days now. So now in just several hours, we'll see thousands of hotel workers across Southern California striking just as people are coming into the city looking for a place to stay for the 4th of July. Savannah?
All right, Nyla, thank you.
Okay. So that really was an example. Even though it's 4th of July, that strike is still pending. And I know. I would say hi. Say hi, Obi. He's enjoying himself. But yes, the whole idea of the workers going on strike, again, I feel like we are still having the same discussion. What I mean by that, folks, is that companies don't believe in the fact that they think that they can sit there and say, "Oh, well, you guys don't really need anything. You guys will cave because we control the purse strings. You may control the pocketbook. This is true. You may control the purse, but you need our labor. At the same time, for hotels, especially in California, you need all the freaking help you can get. At the same time, offering half of what they're asking for in a raise is an insult. It really, truly is. And I keep saying to you guys all the time, join a union. Do never negotiate on your own. Not when you're going, because they're trying to say, why do you need a union? Why can't you just talk to us? Because they will not take you seriously. That is why. At the same time, I am for those workers. You should strike because guess what? The way things change, it's always been the same way in this country. If you want something to change, attack the money. Always, first and foremost, attack the money. Same thing with UPS, because UPS customers are really starting to feel the heat because they are about to strike. An authorized strike is about to happen between the between the carrier and the Teamster union, because right now both sides are walking away. With UPS saying that we offered a great deal, but the teams are still walking away, and the teams are still laughing about this as an insult. Keep in mind, we are in the summertime. If you've ever seen a UPS truck, it is basically a metal box. There is no air conditioning. Those guys are usually in shorts. At the same time, no air conditioning, doors always open, and they're trying to deliver packages, especially in places where pretty much you're on God's hot plate. It's not too much to ask for raises, air-conditioned trucks, and things of that nature from a global logistical company that makes $100 billion in revenue annually. The one thing I will say about this, guys, is that when it comes to these types of companies, they literally and figuratively can make money and still be able to give these people what they're asking for. But again, we'll cover that as it comes along. The last story we got, guys, before we get to our feel good segment is, again, this is the reason why I don't understand how banks are above the law. First, Wells Fargo commits identity theft. Now Bank of America. And you know what Bank of America gets to do? Pay a fine.
For anyone who banks with Bank of America.
Yeah, the U.S. government has ordered the company to pay more than $100 million to customers over illegal fees and other issues. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau says Bank of America will also have to pay $150 million in penalties for issues dating back to 2012. NBC News technology correspondent Jacob Ward is with us now.
Yeah, Jake, take us through this. What exactly did the banks do here, and or the bank rather, and have we heard anything from Bank of America?
Well, so you guys, if you've ever had a non-sufficient funds fee, right? Not only don't you have the money in your account and a check bounces, but then the bank dings you. Well, it turns out Bank of America was dinging people multiple times for the same overdrawn account, $35 every time, and not telling people about it, such that people could not come back at it. So they were double dipping on certain fees. They also turned out to have been withholding credit card reward points, and they were doing something that Wells Fargo had a big scandal around, you'll recall, which is opening accounts without customer consent. It's common practice in banks to incentivize people internally to try to get customers to open as many accounts as possible. It seems, according to the CFPB, that Bank of America may have been doing this among.
So like the employees were opening an account.
Using sensitive information in my name, in your name, and opening accounts you didn't know anything about in order to meet their goals inside.
So full disclosure, I am a Bank of America customer.
Oh, geez.
But bottom line, for people who are like me, are we standing to get some money out of this, or does it depend on whether you had those fees charged?
That's so interesting that you are one of these people. So, assuming that you also were in some way either, hit with one of these fees or perhaps did not get the bonus you were offered, that $150 million you mentioned that's being paid as a penalty is actually going into a CFPB fund that's supposed to go out to people. And Bank of America is trying to actually give out, or is going to be forced to give out about $80 million, a little more than that, directly to consumers. So it seems that you will probably get notice from that bank that you're owed some money.
Divided up, though, by lots and lots of people.
Probably so, but that $35 over and over again made a lot of difference to people who didn't have enough money in that.
So it's crazy. Again, you just saw a bank literally and figuratively. That's identity theft, guys. That's identity theft. There is no way, shape, or form that's identity theft. A bank, an institution, just got caught doing that. Wells Fargo did. CEO resigned. They paid a fine. Bank of America just did. May have to wind up paying $100 million. CEO may step down. Nobody goes to jail. How? If myself took someone else's identity, social security number, and I opened up credit cards, checking accounts, things of that nature in their name, that is identity theft. 9 times out of 10, my black tail's going to jail. If a bank does it, they get a fine. How is this possible? That is the question I ask. How is this possible? It shouldn't be possible. And yet at the same time, that bank, much like Wells Fargo, will definitely be allowed to run. But again, if you are a Bank of America customer and you feel like that is also in your wheelhouse, definitely, hey, seek legal counsel. See if you're owed some money because they're paying out somebody. That's true. But we're going to go ahead and move on to our Feel Good segment, guys, because you don't have the fact we got here. We do cover a lot of things that are doom and gloom and sometimes make you lose your faith in humanity. But hey, it's Wednesday, which is hump day. Tomorrow, which is Friday Eve, which is Thursday. We want to leave you guys out some good vibrations. And I want to start with an event that happened over the weekend that I thought was pretty cool. That, again, for me being a blurred, I hope to take my family to this one day. BlurredCon. If you don't know what BlurredCon is a con that does happen that does happen. Well, this time it happened in DC, but as you can see here, they're setting up for Summer Madness in Virginia. But BlurredCon did actually happen in Washington, D.C. It is a convention specifically set for those of the blurred and nerd variety. And as you can see from here, they had guests, they had wonderful cosplays, and really just a great time for people of fandoms, for Black people of fandoms to really come together And I just love seeing that. At the same time, guys, the beauty part about BlurCon was, from what I've been told, it was all love. Everybody had fun. It was a little hot because, summertime, it's going to be hot everywhere. But the fact that a lot of people were able to come together, cosplay, as you can see right there, because it was Fade to Black, which again, you can see there, a lot of people were coming together. And it was just, from what I've been told, a great time. I'm envious as I'll get out of it, but hopefully next year I'll be able to take my family and enjoy it and be able to enjoy that for myself. But I just love seeing, and I had no problem saying this, I love seeing Black people come together and just have a good old time and just celebrate and just enjoy fandoms. So I just thought that was cool. But that's going to do it for this podcast, guys. I do thank you all for watching, for liking, for letting people know this is live. I certainly appreciate that. Some shameless plugging, guys, before I do get out of here. I always do want to start with a good friend of mine because he supports this show from where he's at, and I always want to definitely show him love. I'm talking about my buddy Vaughn at Big BZA Dot on all social media. You can definitely check him out, especially his YouTube page, where there's plenty of free music to where you can sit there and get some for yourself. He will not put a ban or copyright friend on you. You'll be able to enjoy it, but definitely check him out, Big BZA Dot on all social media. As for myself, guys, you can find me Blackbox447 on all the socials. I usually do reviews and everything that I read, that I play, some gem stuff, because I still believe in doing a couple push-ups. The link at the bottom, guys, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. If you copy and paste that link into your browser, we'll take you to my link tree that has the YouTube and Facebook groups for all of my podcasts. How the Frack Got Here, Get Bit, and of course, all this podcast. Definitely like, share, and subscribe. I would certainly appreciate it because I want to keep the conversation going on everything that we discussed. And again, keep it clean, keep it classy. We're all sharing ideas. But if you are a Trump supporter that's trying to talk mess, hey, you walk in the lion's den. You know what's up. At the same time, guys, I usually say this because every year we need to be more about helping and sharing people. If you've got a friend out there that's promoting something, a friend that's starting a business, a friend that's starting a podcast, something that they truly wholly believe in, at the same time they're trying to get buzz going and you know it, it takes $0 to share something. I'm not saying donate or buy into their business. If you can, you can. But when it comes down to actual promotions, it's $0. In the world of social media, promotions help, especially from those that care and love to see people succeed. And I will always say this in the words of Issa Rae, I am rooting for everybody Black. But also that being said, guys, the last thing I'll say about How the Frack Got Here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel. We are simply giving you all the information allowing you to make up your own mind, but we do provide a logical perspective that goes along with it. We do a better society once we're informed. We're progressive. We move forward. We try to right the wrongs of our past by making decisions now that we should have done back then, like electing our first Black woman to the Supreme Court, electing our first Black woman to the Federal Board of Governors, electing our first Black woman as the National Cybersecurity Advisor to the President, electing another military Black serviceman. All great things. When we don't learn from history, we are doomed to repeat it. That's why we keep asking ourselves, why does everything go up but your paycheck? Why do you keep electing different politicians, still the same old game in Congress? And most importantly, how the frack we got here? From me and from Obi. Thank you all guys for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other, and we will all get through this. Peace.